and it's the same
Yeah.
person. We experience it so differently.
Yeah, exactly right. And so part of that, there's a lot of reasons why we experience things differently, but the important thing to understand is that the brain is the mediator between the external world and the internal world, or that's to say, the environment and your experience of the environment. The brain, and particularly a region of the brain called the limbic system, which is primarily responsible for threat detection and response, basically classifies through past experience. It learns to classify certain instances or experiences or events or people or circumstances as basically either threatening or benign. That's to say, threatening or non-threatening. And then
Yeah.
based on that experience or that classification, the brain will prompt the body to respond accordingly by sending it into either what's known as the fight or flight branch of the nervous system, the sympathetic branch, or rest and digest, which is calm, known as parasympathetic.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing to note is that this not only happens with things that we're aware of, we are subconsciously being, you could say programmed is a word that people sometimes use. We are subconsciously being programmed with information and responses constantly. And this is happening on levels that go, I would say, even a level deeper than the subconscious level. For instance, take, for example, someone who experiences panic attacks or PTSD. You might have someone who was in a war and, experienced a lot of, say, explosions or loud noises, and their brain has understandably associated loud noises with life-threatening or imminent danger. Right now, imagine that you have that person who's come out of the war who has this previous experience programmed into the limbic system, and you put them right next to a New York City construction worker who hears loud noises, explosions, and things all day long, day in, day out, business as usual. And imagine that the two of them are side by side, and halfway down the block, a car backfires, and they hear this explosion. So same exact stimulus, same exact event, but simply in virtue of past programming, the PTSD person, as you would expect, would experience a radically elevated heart rate, pupil dilation, increases in autonomic dysfunction, and basically experience all signs and symptoms of a panic attack and fight, flight, or freeze response. While a construction worker, again, hears the exact same sound, has a completely different reaction and a measurable
Yeah.
reaction, right? So his physiology is going to be probably not even changing at all. Heart rate will stay the
Yeah.
same, no reason to panic. So
Yeah.
this happens, day in, day out with so many different things.
Yeah, we
And
have that
so,
in Israel. We have lots of like people after work, right? And we
mhm,
have the fireworks in the Liberation Day in our Independent Day, and we have a discussion. Like most people really love fireworks, right? Right? They really enjoy it, and we know that many people really experience symptoms of stress when they hear that, and therefore there are like some of the cases people will decide not to go there, or some of the
yeah.
municipalities would not have fireworks because of that.
Right, and that's the tendency, because as human beings, we are very biased against discomfort. That's to say, we want to avoid things that make us feel agitated or uncomfortable, and so this is very understandable. It's the clear reason as to why. But it basically can lead us to take either one of two approaches in life. One of them is to avoid, right? So that's to continuously avoid the things that are triggering our discomfort. When we do that, however, or if we do that consistently, and oftentimes it's unconscious, we end up avoiding also a lot of the things that are going to move us forward or that are good for us. So, for instance, like public speaking would be one example that's very common, that elicits the threat response in people, even though it's not actually threatening. It can produce anxiety, but it can also be reclassified as excitement. So that's something that a lot of times people have anxiety around certain things that would actually be beneficial for them to do, but because of certain just survival wiring or past experience, they tend to avoid those things, and that leads to more avoidance in the future. The other approach is called approach. And this is where we systematically desensitize ourselves to the things that would otherwise throw us for a loop or send us into anxiety. And we do that by gradually exposing ourselves to the what our brain has perceived as the aggressor. And we do that in a specific way to retrain the brain that these things that it thinks are dangerous are actually safe.
Yeah, it's like when you go to anxiety CBT treatment, they would
Hmm.
go with, if you have like anxiety from flights, they would have these like sessions and you get used to going to a plane, going to the airport, then going into the plane and so forth. So it's like the way that they show you the fact that you could really do these things would make you less avoidant of them.
Exactly. And then momentum begets momentum. We build confidence. Our brain realizes that actually I can do these things. I can move forward. I can do things despite the discomfort. I think Norman Doidge in his book, The Brain That Changes Itself, had a great quote where he said, it's not about, alleviating or getting rid of the discomfort. It's about learning to move forward in its presence.
Yeah, it's really, I usually when I go to learn or study, I really try to do it from outside of my comfort zone and outside of what I really know. So in the last year, I studied ACT, which is the acceptance and commitment therapy that is related
Hmm.
to CBT.
Yep.
So it's really, this is what it talks about. It talks about the fact that when you try to avoid things, it's like you feel that it's